Thank you very much. Good evening. For me, it's always a joy to be with the Levis. Okay, it's never one. It's always the packaging, right? It's always a tension. It's always intriguing. It's always challenging. And whenever Hano calls, I know that it's going to cost me a long time of thinking and rebuilding and redesign a lot of my thoughts. But my motivation to come here is not you, another summer academy, another summer university. It's only one person who is not here. Not Petra, it's not you, because you're here. It's because of Solomon Zulzer, okay? For somebody like myself who's so much in love with Ashkenazi, 19th century cantorial music, and the Yekishe tradition. How do you translate Yekishe tradition? Yekishe tradition, okay, whatever it means in Jewish education, to come here and to be in the Solomon Zulzer place, that's a reason to come whenever possible. So, Hano, don't stop inviting me, okay? It's a pleasure. When I looked at the topic, I mean, and we are onto it for a couple of months now, I mean, it's a long period to contemplate about it, I asked myself how to approach it. You want academically, you open the Wikipedia and you read through the epochs and you read through the periods and you read through the events of history and Jewish history. You develop your own reading because not necessarily every event actually can be read and interpreted this way, that way, and you have the story. And then I thought to myself, is it possible to take whatever contemporary nowadays, the spirit of the time, which happens in Israel but all over the place, and look at the same time both to the roots of it and to the significance of it, and therefore it's a different kind of journey. It's a different kind of journey in the sense that at home we used to say that history is the politics of the past and politics is the history of the future. So can we travel between history and politics, politics and history, and try to understand some of the expressions and the symptoms and the phenomena of our time in order to see where they're coming from and maybe even guess the general direction, where are they going to? And therefore, it will be a kind of a very challenging journey that we are going to travel together tonight at the same time, three different roller coasters at the same time. The actuality roller coaster, the historical one, and the theological one. Because it is not only this and not only that and not only that, it's all of them together, somehow mixed, somehow confusing, somehow make a lot of sense. And therefore, we look backwards nowadays and forwards in order to understand so many of the phenomena. When you read about whatever happens out there in the Middle East, in our little piece of land, in our promised land, which is, by the way, a very interesting promise, because when you look at the Zionist ideology, especially the founders of the State of Israel, all of them were very Nietzschean in their philosophy to say God is dead, so therefore there is no God, but we fully believe and we fully accept the promise of this no God to give us the land. So on one hand we don't have a God, but we really love his promise of the promised land. This is kind of a paradox at the root of the Zionist oxymoron. But when you look at the reality nowadays and you read it and you say, oh, it's awful, and atrocities and crimes, and everybody has a position for the Jews, against the Jews, for the Muslims, against the Muslims, and you ask yourself, out of this, a reality which is really a collision between maybe two of the most aggressive zealots philosophies of our time, the extreme Jewish one sitting at the government and the extreme version of political Islam at the Palestinian life, colliding into each other. Can we understand something out of it? So on one hand, I will say not yet. Not yet. When you say today October 7th, everybody has a taking on October 7th. I'm not at all sure that if and when we shall look at it 100 years down the road, we shall remember October 7th. We shall remember the 100 Years' War. We shall remember something bigger than that, not exactly the detail. But nowadays, the detail is very powerful and very compelling. And let's put it like that. When you look at the expressions of activities and military and political maneuvers, you understand that there is something there, at least something, it is required to put a framework in order to move onwards. What is the frame? I will say that, at least from my point of view, nothing of what Israel did to the Palestinians from 48 and 67, the occupation and the discrimination and the limitations and whatever it is, whatever we did to the Palestinians from 48 up until today does not justify a millimeter of what Hamas did to the Israelis and to Israel at October 7th. And whatever happened at October 7th does not justify the blind killing and the revenge war that Israel is doing in Gaza. Now, this between two unjustified big politics, we have to navigate gently to look for the roots of where is it coming from, where this mentality of revenge and retaliation and political extremism is coming from. And when you look at the current Israeli government, politically speaking, you might like it. Politically speaking, you might like it even more. It's the Israeli government. I mean, Israel is the only half-democracy in the Middle East. They have a kind of a half-democratic government. It's fine. No problem. I mean, if you want to give it a little bit more illustration, it looks like a kind of a coalition between AfD and something to the right of the AfD. Is the already was born already? There's something right to the AfD? Not yet, but it is there. It's a full, we call it Yamin Male Male, full-scale right-wing government. And whatever they do, you have a feeling that there are no breaks anymore. Everything is permitted, everything is allowed, everything is possible. And my main argument for the evening will be nothing of what we see now expressed by the Israeli politicians or the Israeli ideologies. None of it is new. All of it is old. All of it was there. All of it was really sleeping in a kind of a deep hibernation for so many years. And all of a sudden the time arrived and everything erupts. So what am I talking about what was sleeping and what is the time that arrived? First, the phenomena. We are living in an era that our lunacy is not the only one in the world. I mean, can you imagine the world after coming October in the United States of America? What does that mean? I mean, oof. Might be a very fascinating world soon, okay? America like that, and Austria, whatever it had in recent years, Germany, Italy, France. There is a kind of a rising coalition or rising international alignment of non-liberal regimes or non-liberal democracies, as Fareed Zakaria called it 25 years ago. But it is a kind of an international, global, at least at the Western world, of withdrawal from politics of responsibility. Up until a while ago, most of the politicians at the Western world, and some at the former Soviet Union bloc as well, were born into the times in which the Second World War and its atrocities and horrors was a living memory. And everybody understood that if I go a little bit too far, one bridge too far, it's too dangerous. And therefore, a lot of world politics, as crazy as politics is, could be characterized as politics of responsibility. Even in the midst of the Cold War, responsibility was there. Now we have a generation that these memories are far away. For many kids in Israel, they have no idea who Ben-Gurion was, the founder of the State of Israel. And many kids in Germany, for them, Hitler and Barbarossa, Friedrich Barbarossa, are more or less classmates from the same vintage. I mean, it's far away. Who knows? Who remembers anymore? I remember when I wrote a book of mine some 20 years ago, I went to meet my auntie Bertel. She was a refugee from Dresden through Poland to New York, and she was a refugee, a Holocaust survivor and a refugee all of her life long. She was 99 years old, and I went to visit her at the elderly home in New York. And she said, "Avraham, what are you doing these days?" So I said, "Auntie Bertel, I write a book." "What are you writing about?" "I write a book about the omnipresence of the Holocaust in our life and how the Holocaust became from an experience to a national strategy." So she, who was a very smart woman, said, "Avraham, do you really think that in 100 years' time anybody will remember the Holocaust?" And that was a question that haunted me. Who will remember what? And actually we are now less than 100 years after the atrocities of the Second World War, and the memory fades. And politics of irresponsibility are all over the world. But it's not just the withdrawal and the decline of responsibility in the global arena. It's also a very interesting, enhanced religious bubbling at each and every religion we know, from Hinduism, that was something else entirely from monotheism, up until couple of decades ago, and all of a sudden Hinduism is so nationalistic and militant. Christian fundamentalism, Muslim fundamentalism, Jewish fundamentalism, it's all over the place. And therefore, when you look at the combination of politics of no memories of what does that mean to be irresponsible, plus the religious extremism, you understand that something very, very, very dramatic is happening in front of our eyes. It's like a kind of a very interesting rendezvous between nitro and glycerin waiting to happen. Nationalism and religious nationalism, it's a recipe for a bomb. Having said that, at least for us Jews, Israelis, it is not that we are waiting for the end of the day's redemption. It is not that we are waiting for the absolute messianic appearance. In the eyes of many, philosophically or intuitively, the days we are living today are the end of the days of yesterday. Only did you wake up my grandfather and ask him or her. Usually in our family 200 years ago it was about asking him rather than asking her, but I don't know about your families at the time. And you ask him, "Grandpa, do you know that we Jews, we have a state and we have an army and we actually quite influential in Germany? That Germany doesn't move without us, which is the superpower of Europe, and we are quite influential in Washington, and we have 25% of the Nobel Prize laureates, and we have Woody Allen? I mean, and we are so influential in the world. I take it that my grandfather would have said, "What happened? Messiah arrived?" So from the point of view of all past Jewish days, today is the end of the days. So we are living in a kind of a very tenseful messianic era. Messianism is not just a philosophy towards future days. It's nowadays actual politics. I take it a step further, which is not a discussion of tonight, but we have to take it into consideration when you live life of such intensive spiritual, ideological, and emotional tension, and you have the amplifier or the amplifiers of the social networks, it's almost impossible to control. I mean, at a time, you had an issue So you send a letter to the rabbi. The rabbi was sitting on this 6 months. He sent you back a letter. It came back. The post did not really work. So it took a year till a norm changed a millimeter. Now you tweet it. An individual runs the Western world by 140 characters in his Twitter account. And he's about to be re-elected. So when you take all of these ideas and you extrapolate them and you multiply them by the social networks, the echo it's a huge cacophony to be paid attention to because it is there. Now, what will be the methodology, or what is the methodology of our conversation tonight? It's not just about what I tell you about the relationship between history and politics, that politics is the history of the past, and history is the politics of the past, and politics is the history of the future. Let's go and look for gestalts, for frameworks that this happens. And let's say that every person we know, or many people we know, really would like to have basic elementary definitions, identity and belonging. Who am I? Who am I? And what do I belong to? Everybody likes to have it. It's difficult to be a total individual, totally isolated, absolutely alone in this world. You need a kind of a support group, be it your family, be it your tribe, be it your group, be it your nation, be it an imagined community. So identity and belonging are crucial, especially at the times of confusion. And the time we're living at is a time of confusion. Extremism and zealotry is a kind of a dormant monster that wakes up whenever there is a vacuum. When the world is organized, authority is clear, hierarchy is clear, laws are clear, behavior and norms are clear, there is no room for it. But the minute all the structures are falling down and people are saying, what happened? What will be with us? Where is it going? All of a sudden we are so troubled and we are looking out of the box solutions and absolute solutions. Now, we are living in an era like this. But a moment of history before we come back to our time, and I promise you a crisscross between past and present. When you look at times in the past in which world order collapsed, you realize that whenever the world order collapsed or was shaking, something new, revolutionary, was born, and its impact was for centuries to come, for millennia to come. When Akhenaton in ancient Egypt is fighting the polytheism of the time and introduces monotheism, not the way we know it today. That was a time in which dynasties came down and came up, and Egypt was not stable, and something new was born. Then Moses, according to both Freud and Walt Disney, the Prince of Egypt, took this idea, copy-pasted it, and moved on with it. But it was born then in Egypt in times of kind of, I'll say, spiritual or faith instability. When you look at the instability of the time in which Christianity was born, the entire region, both Rome versus the Parthian, how do you call them, Parthian? The Parthim. What is it? How do you say the Parthim? The Eastern superpowers were fighting in a kind of a global war. Here in Israel, though it's not clear who is the regime, who is for what, new movements were born. Judaism, the way we know it, is not an Abrahamic religion. It is sister to Christianity, both born at the 1st century, the way we know them today. Rabbinical Judaism and Christian Neo-Judaism were born in this time of the 1st century and its turmoils. When you look at the fall of the vacuum created by the fall of the Roman Empire by the end of the 5th century, no wonder a century later Islam was born, because there was a vacuum. And I can go on and on and on and on and show each and every time you have this kind of instability, something new and powerful and compelling is born and offered to the people as a way to explain the ill-organized world in a new formula of how to reorganize it. And in nowadays, you ask yourself something about nostalgia. When Simone de Beauvoir wrote her memoir, she called it, "Nostalgia is not what it used to be." And it is right. In the life of nations, we all fabricate the past. I don't know any modern nation, they did not beautify, manicured a little bit its history in order to make it a little bit more compelling to the national story, the national narrative. But you ask yourself today, in the 21st century, after we won Corona, I mean, we are really good, and we almost made it to the quarterfinal, Austria, I mean, okay? I mean, it's a perfect era. Why everybody wants to go back to history? Why Trump wants to make America great again? I don't know what he's talking about. Maybe slavery? Maybe the war in Grenada? I don't know what he's talking about when America was really great. But let's say there was a moment that America was great. And Putin would like to go back to the 10th century Tsar, 10th century Russian Tsar. Erdogan wants to go back to the Ottoman Empire. ISIS would like to go back to the Khalifa. And my humble Jews would like to rebuild the temple, go back to the 1st century. Everybody wants to go back to history. What's wrong with the future? And one of the issues of what's wrong with the future is exactly this, the confusion which leads to a fear. There are at least 3 fears in our contemporary time. People are afraid, and the younger you are, the more concerned you are about your future economy. Will our kids be able to survive with the pensions and with the retirement and the aging on one hand, and less money to our general public and governmental economy and pension funds on the other hand? Will they be able to retire in an honorable way, the way our parents did and the way we are going to do it? So the economic fear of the future, the fear for the future of the globe, of planet Earth, global warming, and the weapons of mass destructions in irresponsible hands in so many conflicts around the world are three of the components of nowadays fears. And when the future is so frightening, let's go back to a kind of a real or imagined past that was so good that we didn't have any fears, as if. And sometimes, or many times, and in many cases, the militant, the identity militants, and going back to fundamental basics is a reaction to something else. In many societies, in many cultures, in many places, when you see religious fundamentalism or national fundamentalism taking over or getting stronger, it's a response to the victory or to achievements of openness and liberal values. Politics works, I mean, that's from personal experience, politics in many cases works like a pendulum. Sometimes it goes this way, sometimes it goes backwards. When you look at the last almost century, till the end of the Second World War, up until today, the liberal progressive values and the democratic thinking expanded and expanded and expanded and expanded, be it gender issues, be it liquid sexuality, be it national belonging, be it so many things. Progressive values achieved so much that by the beginning of the day, every day nowadays, the conservative stands up and say, I want a family that the father is a father and mother in a mother like I used to have. I do not want my kid to be A, B, and C. I do not want this chaotic, post-modern, no-structure world. So in a way, what we see today in so many places, it's not a taking over of conservative values, it's a pushback because the liberal one succeeded so much. So in a way, the worse it is, it means how good we are. In a way, an optimist like myself who never succeeded to drink from the half-empty part of the glass, so I always try to drink from the half-full part of the glass, I say, wow, if they are so angry about my liberal values, it means that we did something good. Not bad. Keep working, Mr. Burg. Okay? Keep pushing. But having said that, or having said all of that, I will say something which is very, very crucial for us to understand. The state of Israel, in a way, is an icon. Yes, we believe that we are exceptional and we believe that we are unique. Yes. Yeah, we're not. Every nation, every individual is unique, and everyone is exceptional, yet. Okay? Let's remember deep in our mind two things. Is it possible to imagine Europe without Germany, the EU without Germany? Is it possible to imagine Germany without the role of the Jew and Israel at the core of its identity? Is it possible to understand Germany without the Jew as a victim? And therefore, is it possible to understand America with this vague definition of Judeo-Christian value system? I do not really know what it means, but it sounds good. So I say it, I use it. It sounds good, Judeo-Christian. Can you understand the American value system without the centrality and the contribution of the Jews into this discourse? It's impossible. So in a way, we, the state of Israel, are playing a crucial role in the identity of the two most important superpowers of the West today, Germany and the United States of America. And because we play this role, we have a feeling that everything is permitted and everything is in a way allowed. We did not pay attention, and it was permitted or contained or enabled by so many political systems in the world for us as the abused child of history. The Jews as the eminent, permanent victim of the history, to come a violent parent and do to others what we hated to be done to us. And Germany, America, world contain it because we are Jews and we had history. And in a way, we are victims of our own victimhood. Were we not victims, we could have been normal. I know we don't have an experience to be normal, which is different. It's a challenge by itself, how to be normal. But today it's almost impossible. And when you look at our world today, of our Israel today, please join me with the argument to say the following thing. The Jewish paradigm of today, if there is one Jewish paradigm, I'm not at all sure, did not yet react because historical, theological reactions are slow. It's never fast, it's never overnight. It takes a while. When President Obama became president, I was so fascinated by it. I read everything published, and one blogger after another, one publication after another argued Obama's election is the end of slavery. And I said to myself, how come slavery ended 150 years ago? What do you mean it ended now? But an ocean liner like this in history takes time to stop, takes time to make a U-turn. And the Jewish ocean liner did not yet seriously react to modernity and secularization of the West, to the Holocaust and to the establishment of the State of Israel. 3 huge dramas, but we never seriously reacted to it deep inside. The way, for example, we reacted to the destruction of the Second Temple or the First Temple or a few other phenomena in our history. And Israel of today, without reacting conceptually, simply living, there is a beautiful Hebrew song, Ani chaya li miyom leyom. I live from a day to day. So the Jewish strategy of nowadays is to live from a day to day. Forget about long-term planning. I mean, and look at Netanyahu, he's the ultimate Jew. He's really surviving from day to day. As a concept, very Jewish, so to say. But Israel of today is a fusion of 6 elements never fused before into one raw material. Israel of today and the identity of, when I say Israel, I mean for the context of this conversation, Jewish Israel. Because Israel is 80% Jews and 20% non-Jews, should be equal citizens to the rest of us. And when you go to the exhibition at the museum and you look at the 4 Palestinian Israeli girls, you understand that they are not really fully equal citizens in our country. But theoretically speaking, supposed to be. But when I talk about 80% of the Jews, our national identity is a fusion of power, sovereignty, language, religion, territory, and actual redemption. Never in our life did these 6 elements fuse together into one. There were times in which we had territory, but we were not religious. Some other times we were religious, but we spoke Aramaic or Greek, but not Hebrew. Some other times we spoke Hebrew, but we didn't have sovereignty. Some other times we had sovereignty, but it was not redemptive and not messianic. And now all of a sudden, it's all the 5 together, all the 6 together. And this is a new reality that triggers very deep triggers. Gershom Scholem, the great Jewish historian, wrote in 29 to Franz Rosenzweig. I mean, all of this years again, okay? He wrote him a letter about a vow to our language, a vow of loyalty to our language. And writes Scholem to Rosenzweig, God will never remain muted in the language in which we made him take a vow to return to our life. Says Scholem, the great historian of Messianism, of the Sabbatinians and Messianism, listen, when you reactivate this language, which is loaded with mechanisms of redemption, Messianism, end of the world eschatology, it is not just a language to sell me falafel, give me hummus. It's a language that when you use it, something else emerges from deep. A couple of weeks ago, I was running in Tel Aviv along the Yarkon. We call it river. I don't know how you call it here. I mean, here you can call it maybe a water sewage system. But the Yarkon River, it's one of our rivers, okay? And I was running along the Yarkon River, running. Do you know the situation that you see something, but it doesn't register? So you pass some couple of meters, and then you go back and you realize what you did. So I passed it by a couple of meters. I went back. There was a huge billboard which was written Geulat HaYarkon, the redemption of the Yarkon River. Who is the Messiah? Who is the donkey? Who is the Redeemer? Who is the Savior? But Geulah, redemption, is a loaded word. The Zionists never bought land. They redeemed the land. Why? Because it's a preparation for a bigger, messianic, end of the day saviors to come. And word by word like this, you realize that in Israel of today, you have a collision of 2 kinds of tensions. One is the religious eschatological one, and the other is the national eschatological one. Not exactly the same. One is secular, one is very religious, but both of them together created a kind of metamorphosis in the classical rabbinical Judaism that we knew up until, let's say, the middle of the 20th century, which in a way rejected any manifestation of power and muscles and political responsibility, to a rabbinical Judaism of today which admires power, from passive waiting for the end of the days God eventually to come down from his or her, coming down in order to save us, to be active, to accelerate the movement of redemption. And in a way, it's a different kind of Judaism that we have in Israel, never had in our history. Never. Memories that were buried so deep are excavated. Nobody who reads the Talmud for the last 2,000 years had an idea that there is a place like Masada, that something happened there, and it was a kind of a heroic, suicidal expression against the oppression of the superpower of the time. Nobody knew about it. Came the Zionist revolution. Some will say invented the past. Some will say beautified the past and created a mythology that Masada is a molding experience of our identity. And cohorts after cohorts after cohorts, year after year after year of Israeli soldiers climbed to the top of Masada and took a vow of loyalty to the army at the top of the mountain that supposedly Jews committed suicide as heroes. What does that mean? That rabbinical Judaism didn't want to know about this experience, wanted to cancel it, if we talk about the culture of cancellation. But once we came back to history, in the language, we renewed the language, old memories were dig from deep the earth, and became as if a new reality. And when I look at this, and this kind of Israel, at that kind of Israel, I have to read something else, which is theological and religious. Look at Jesus Christ. Was born as a Jew and passed away, crucified as a Jew. Was a good Jew of the time. Belonged maybe to the school of thought of Hillel, the more moderate, tolerant school of thought. Expressed the kind of tolerance and maybe even pluralism, if I can use late-time Christian terminology, back on the back of time eventualities. Very tolerant one. Judaism, from the first century and the destruction of the temple, Christianity as a mirror image of it, watered down, diluted a lot of biblical expressions that you cannot live with mountains of interpretations, with alternation of events, in order to make sure that nobody takes the past as a model for the future. At the 19th century, two different powers walked into the spiritual field. The Protestant interpretation of the Bible, back to the foundations, and the Zionist one, which erased all the rabbinical learning, all the Talmudic interpretation, all the filters of the years, and Zionism is a revolution of going back. We took a train backwards, and we drive back to the past. And all of a sudden, genocide to the biblical seven nations of the land of Canaan is kosher. Joshua slaughtering so many of enemies is a hero. King David, that was not allowed by the prophets and by God to build a temple because he had bloody hands, became a hero. And the kind of Zionism, the national revolution of the Jews at the 19th and 20th and 21st century, which is going back to history without the Jewish filters, actually canceled all the softness that made Judaism a kind of a soft religion and made it in Israel a very hard one. Fundamentalist, hard, that there are enough people at the philosophical circle, political circle, and governmental circle who really believe that the biblical program is a command to execute nowadays, here and now. You hear ministers, you hear rabbis, you even hear the Prime Minister of Israel talking about the Palestinians as Amalekites, which the biblical commandment about the Amalekite is to kill them all. So it's an ancient mythology, an ancient anecdote that becomes a nowadays politics. So is that zealotry? Or is that reality? Is it both? In Israel, at the struggle between Israel is a Jewish and democratic state. Don't ask me what does that mean. Sounds to me like a good co-op we can sell. Two at the price of one. Not only it's democratic, it's also Jewish. Okay, sounds good. But when you dig deep into it, you understand it cannot work together. Because the source of authority of democracy are the human beings of here and now, and the source of authority of Jewish is the theological one. No organization, no state, no group of people can function with two such colliding sources of authority, the theological one and the democratic one. And in the last 8 decades, in the struggle, in the hand wrestling between the Jewish and democratic, the Jewish prevails. And much stronger than the democratic one in Israel. And especially the kind of Jewish that we are talking here today and tonight. And here comes the question, where is it all going? I think it was here a couple of years ago, I first time shared with you a little bit of my mom. We used to ask my mom, who had terrible life. She didn't have nice life, she didn't have good life. We asked her, Mom, are you an optimist or a pessimist? She said, wow, me? Of course I'm an optimist. Today is much better than tomorrow. So that's a kind of optimism that was my mom's. I'm not my mom's optimist. I really believe that every day is better than the previous day. That's my feeling. Every now and then we have bumpers, we have the downhill and this and that, but all in all I believe that humanity and Jewish humanity within general humanity is moving onwards. There is a progress in many, many things with all the setbacks. And when I ask myself, where is it coming from? I will say the most fascinating restructure, rehabilitation, rebuilt energy of the Jewish people, the most important tool we have is the destruction. At each and every one of our previous destructions once happened. At the time it was a tragedy. At the time it was a bloodshed. At the time it was breaking hearts of many, from prophets to simple people at the street. But long term, each and every destruction of us at the past created a better Jewish civilization. After the destruction of the first temple, with all of its problems, and there were many problems, was born a different kind of a Jewish people. After the destruction of the second temple was born 2,000 years of the rabbinical Judaism, that parts of it was, I will say, part of it was so important for the value system, the foundations for the value system of the entire West. About many things, from religious interpretation up until the very end of the foundations of modern state and civil rights and human rights, etc. Destructions and ruins and in the Jewish civilization a very, very good tool. And I have a feeling that what we see nowadays is this kind of a scale destruction. Almost all the paradigms on which the state of Israel was built and operated up until recently are challenged or brought down. It's an opportunity either to go all the way to the kaput end or all the way to rebuild and restart. And it's a very unique moment in the life of the nation. I believe it is possible. I believe it is possible, at least according to the three elements that I mentioned before. I said that Israel, the Jewish people did not yet react to the secularization of the Western civilization. I believe that in Israel, if there will be a built-in, constitutional, secular public sphere, which is based on the separation between not church and state, but let's say Knesset and Beit Knesset, okay, which is the synagogue and the parliament, and distancing redemptive, eschatological philosophies from the real political life. It's an opportunity. When I say there was no reaction to the establishment of the State of Israel, can we take what is happening to us now, extremism included, and say, what is this State of Israel? Is it just a safe haven for Jews for never again? And you remember that as ancient or as old as the Zionist idea is, after the Holocaust in 45, all of a sudden Israel became something else. Instead of a pioneering 19th century nation state for the Jews, it became a safe haven and a shelter for the Jews because of the Holocaust. Now it's October 7th that we realize that the state cannot provide this protection. Can we look at it a bit differently and to say, actually we are here to offer a different kind of a state, which is, we will be the kind of a state that it's politics, and it will take time. It's a politics of morale rather than politics of muscles, a politics which say whatever was done to us, we do not want to do to others. Is it possible? My answer is yes. I'll take it even further. For a person like myself, the Holocaust was, as Hannah Arendt said, was a crime against humanity performed on the body of the Jewish people. But it was a crime committed by human beings to human beings. And therefore, the teaching should be that we would like to offer a situation that so many victimed societies in the world, to offer a way to show it is possible to break the pathological circle of the abused child not becoming an aggressive parent. It is possible to forgive. It is possible to reconcile. Difficult it is. Looks to me it's a path we never tried. We tried all 50 shades of power in retaliation. Not even one shade of real peace commitment. Is it possible? I feel the readiness at certain parts of the Palestinian society, readiness at many parts of the Arab world around us, and maybe it's a potential for the Jews as well in Israel. And last but not least, this is something that we did not yet understand. Israel is a fascinating Garden of Eden of oxymorons. Tell me what kind of oxymoron you want, I'll give you one. So many paradoxes, so many contradicting concepts, etc. I'll give you one of them. You walk out of the street, to the Jewish street, and you ask an individual, what are you? He says, I'm a Jew. What does that mean to be a Jew? My father was a Jew, my mother was a Jew. What is a Jew? So you push a little bit, and eventually a Jew is somebody who was born to a Jewish parent. Before your normative behavior, before accepting any kind of Torah paradigm or whatever it is, I was born into these Jewish people. The more you move to the conservative scale, to the more religious one, this chosenness is genetic. It's a nation of blood. Only if you are born to a Jew, you are automatically entitled to have an Israeli citizenship. Nation of blood, or being chosen this way, is a very good survival tool when you are a minority among majority societies. Wow, the Christian gave us hell at the Catholic Spain of the 15th century. Don't worry. They will come, and God will show them all how chosen and how much He loves us. It's worth it to wait 2,000 years till this love of God, of being chosen by God, will be expressed. It was difficult under some Muslim places. Don't worry, don't worry. History is waiting for us. We're the chosen people. When you are a minority, having concept of redemption and every concept of Messiah and having concept of being chosen a very good survival kit or very good tools in the toolbox. But when you become a majority and you do not change the operating system, this is a problem. Is it possible to have a nation of chosen people which is still democracy in which everybody is equal? Either everybody is equal democratically or one element has supremacy and therefore it's not a democracy. And this is just one example of so many poisonous fruits that it's about time for the Jewish philosophy, Jewish theology, Jewish history, and Jewish pedagogy, Jewish education, okay? Jewish education to address. When I ask you, what is Judaism? You tell me, wow, Judaism, such an illuminated civilization. We gave to the world the concept of Shabbat, the socialist day off in which you do not work, the concept of equality of your slave and your whatever it is, the concept of you should not do to your friend what you hate to be done to you. Beautiful, beautiful illuminated texts. And then I will ask you, tell me, if we are so beautiful and such beautiful texts, how comes we are so, excuse the language, so fucked up? I mean, what's wrong? Why doesn't it work? And one of the answers is because we never had the guts to address the poisonous texts and the poisonous fruits of Judaism. And Judaism has beautiful beauties and very ugly uglies. And we never had either the need or the courage to address the poisonous elements: zealotry, messianism, eschatology, irresponsible politics, and all the rest of them. Maybe with the destruction and the ruin and the demolition that Israel is going through now, we shall see the need and the requirement and the necessity to address the poisonous elements in our culture and civilizations in order to rebuild the place, this time correctly. Thank you very much.